We can't approve the minutes because we don't have them. So, actually,
Thank you.
one of the main reasons to have this meeting was to try to get a little bit of an update into the town meeting members package. So I drafted a letter to use as a basis. We don't have to do it, it doesn't have to be exactly this. Oh, wait a minute, did you want to do your thing first?
Up to you.
He did.
Up to you.
All right, can we, all right, we'll take you out of order.
Oh, thanks.
So,
So, I mean, you did ask me to be here, so I'm happy to discuss any aspect of
Well-
the Horsley-Witten
Maybe
master.
identify yourself.
Oh, yeah, I could probably do that. I'm too used to being at these meetings, being at the other end. Bernie Cahill, I'm the town planner in Shrewsbury. So the town was awarded a $50,000 grant by Mass Development to conduct a visioning and master planning of the existing Beal building, not the new one, so people don't get confused what's going on. The existing Beal building right here in downtown, and also the town center generally, so not just Beal, but focus on Beal, but to take into account the entire surrounding town center. Within that scope that they provided and was approved by Mass Development, part of it is to pull together the existing conditions of what's downtown right now, to do a site reconnaissance, which I did today with them. We walked around for a good hour and a half, and I pointed out various parts of the town center that have come up in discussions that I've had for the last few years with different people. We are holding the meeting tonight with the Town Center Association, which is a group of small business owners, nonprofits, and municipal services like the library in the town center who have a stake in what happens there. As well as this committee is invited to this in the next hour at 6 o'clock, and the planning board will be there as well. And that is to solicit feedback from these stakeholder groups in town so that they can, as they move forward, understand what some of the concerns, hopes, dreams, ideas, and challenges the town has for this. So when they pull together this part of their report, they, and as they move forward, they know what the stakeholders are looking for. After all, this is not their idea of visioning, they are helping the town come up with the visions. Finally, they're going to provide also, Horsley Witten, I guess I probably didn't mention it, they're the consulting group that was chosen to do this, to act on this grant. We'll be coming up with 2 street-level conceptual renderings of the project. Again, these are conceptual and theoretical, so for anyone at home listening, these are not anything to decide on. What it is to do is to help the Beal Reuse Committee and everyone in town who's interested think about what different alternatives and possibilities might look like in fact and rather than just in our heads, and to put some bones on some of these ideas, just so we can get an idea of, you know, if we did, like, if a mixed-use project went in there, well, what would that actually look like in reality? In fact, if the building isn't torn down and in fact stays that way and is repurposed for something, again, what would that look like, and how would it function within the rest of the town center? Does that make sense? So how it would connect in terms of parking and walkways and parks and public access and so on and so forth. So that's kind of the purpose of their existence, or not say their existence, their reason for being here and why we're doing this grant. The public forum, there's going to be a public forum eventually, and there'll be advertising for that. And again, this is going to, and I think it's going to be the week of November 12th. We don't have a firm date yet for it. But the idea is, again, to do the same thing, solicit ideas and priorities around the town center, and that includes the Beal site. Let's see, was there anything I missed? Let me check. I think I got most of it. And in the end, the Horsley Witten will come up with this final report, which will encompass all these ideas, which will encompass the renderings, some proposals perhaps for which I'm particularly interested in, and potential zoning for the town center. Again, not just to include uses at Beal, but within, so we could have a more unified zoning code for town center as it moves forward. This is something I've been advocating for a while, either as an overlay district or as its own standalone district. Again, Horsley Witten is offering their knowledge and expertise on this, but they are by no means the final deciders in this matter. They're not making a decision for us. They are presenting the town, and I think particularly from what I've followed of this board, I think this board with a little more teeth, or not teeth, but so much as some real concrete guidance on what things could look like. Because I think from these conversations from the Beal Reuse Committee that I've seen and heard, is that there's a lot of good ideas out there and there's a lot of brainstorming going on, but without perhaps a concrete idea of what that would look like and how it would kind of manifest itself if we were to move forward with those ideas. So the idea is that this will provide the information and the guidance so that the town can then make their next move. And I think some things, will probably surprise us that they find, or suggestions that they make that, our planning staff or anyone in town, engineers or what have you, haven't thought of yet. I think a great example is I had some of the preliminary information from the parking study, which isn't done yet, but some of the numbers coming out of that parking study by the other group were surprising, and Mo was there yesterday, and we went over some of it, and I think when that report comes out, which will be folded into this group, now that was done by a different consultant called Stantec, but they're gonna be providing that information to Horsley Witten to include in their visioning scope, their document, right? So, but I think that surprised me. I mean, I think it was something around 2,000, right, Mo? 2,000 parking spaces in private, but they're there. And so that's, again, we can talk about that later, but that was a number that, took me by surprise, and I wouldn't have guessed it if you had told me. So I think we might be in for some similar surprises with these, the two companies. Actually, it's not just Horsley Witten, it's also, what was it, Union Studios is the, I'll find it. There's someone else helping them, and that's gonna be the person who does more of the renderings and so on for that. So I think that's kind of the idea, and again, at 6 o'clock today, we're gonna start with these stakeholder groups I mentioned, and they're there to solicit your feedback and everyone's feedback to kind of get an idea of what is it that the town's looking for, what long-standing ideas are there, what issues are coming up, whether it's pedestrian or what. I mean, the nice thing about this versus the parking is so specifically focused on parking, where parking will just be one part of it, and then we'll have a bigger idea of uses. And I think it's good. I think it'll be really good, and I think it will really help this committee, but the whole town too, including Board of Selectmen and everyone else, and planning, come up with an idea for what should go there next, or what we should at least push for. So, again, they're not offering the answer. It's not theirs to decide or answer, but they're there to give us that information so we can come up with our own answers. Any questions?
Okay. No, I think it's gonna be helpful, because one of the issues that we had as a committee is we didn't have the resources to do what's gonna be done here.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, volunteer committee with no resources is kinda tough. I know we could've talked planning, but this, I think it'll help a lot. Help us put a final report together. Anybody have any comments?
No, very thorough, good analysis, good recommendation. I concur and support and agree with everything you said. Thank you.
Ben, this is a public meeting, not me, but hold on, let the other guys talk. I'll let you talk.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Anything?
Okay. I agree. I think it's,
Anybody else? Sure.
it was worth going through the exercise.
Yeah, I'm here tonight because I had a thing I've been working on for like 2 years now, and that is to use Beal School for Shrewsbury Housing Authority housing. I spoke before the authority probably 2 years ago now. But when when this came up, I've been to all the housing authority locations. I've talked to all the groups that are there, and their biggest problem is transportation. That's their #1 problem. And it's not a lot, it's like if they wanna get a loaf of bread, it's a long walk. Everything's hard to get. And of course, you can't run the buses after 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And so that means they can't even make doctor's appointments. So it costs them like $8 to get to the doctor and $8 to get back. It's really rough. So anyway, I look at down there where the housing authority is, and I think, well, first of all, just a couple of numbers.
Stay with the Beal project then.
Huh?
Stay with the Beal project.
Beal price. Well, Beal reuse.
Right,
Yeah.
that's what I meant, the reuse thing. Okay.
Well, the minutes at the towers, 30 at the state, between Francis and Elizabeth. So we've got, had them all up, we've got, 69 apartments. The backlog is 62 at the towers and 113 between Elizabeth and Francis Gardens. That means we have a backlog of 175 units. And we're getting 1 to 2 applications a day.
I don't understand backlog. We have no backlog per se. Do you mean wait list?
The wait list, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the waiting list is that big. That sound right?
Well, wait list, but yeah, there's no backlog in public housing.
No, I mean the services, no, there's no problem there. I'm looking at it from an operations.
Well, from an operational
Engineer
point of
type.
view, wait list. So you're talking about a wait list.
All right, we're talking about waiting lists. And they're getting about 1 to 2 applicants a day. Anyway, to me, I call that backlog nothing personal, nothing about the work.
Not
The
personal.
wait list is long, we can call it a queue then. It's a queue. Anyway, and the number of seniors that are gonna need someplace to live is gonna start to really expand. And I haven't heard of I haven't seen anything about what we're planning to do for housing authority apartments. And the housing authority is really they're a gem. I mean, they really get every dollar out of that. In fact, last year they gave back $41,000 to the town in a pilot. They do a great job. They're just terrific people there. Good system. Anyway, I think that reusing Beal for senior housing would be like a little economic engine for downtown. Because all these seniors, they got money, they like to spend it, but they have to go get a ride 48 hours in advance to go some places. But they're down there, and everything that they need is within maybe 100 yards of that building. And the bus line goes right by there. So a lot of the transportation problems just go away. Because you can get a bus in there up to UMass and back, and it just seems so perfect. I just think we've got a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I don't think we're ever gonna see housing, the possibility of senior housing in what I call the village. I don't see we're gonna see that again in our lifetime. We may put in some more parking spaces, and that's possible too. But one of the questions I've been asked is, where are all these parking spaces? What are they gonna do down in Shrewsbury after 5 o'clock? They have restaurants there, and that's about it. Dunkin' Donuts is closed. There's not a whole lot to do downtown, and we do have some parking over at the library in the later hours. Well, anyway, so you need some parking, that's obvious. But I'm just saying, all the things they need to do, the banks, they got an eye doctor down there, they got some medical doctors across the street, they got the library, the senior centers within walking distance. So I just think it's important to think about that. I don't think we've got another chance. Now, Natick,
Wait, so,
okay,
so the bottom line is you think we should have,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
So
but
I think maybe what you're talking about might be more appropriate for when,
No, yeah, I think what Horsley Witten is gonna be looking for is this kind of input. And
Right.
I think that's appropriate to bring this up. Horsley Witten, or just call him a consultant, they're not gonna advocate for anything. I mean, I think that's, and Ben's perfectly within his rights to advocate for these things, obviously. But they're gonna be collecting this input. If someone's passionate about something at this site, I mean, it could be, other people too want this. I mean, they're gonna take all that into account. So they're here to listen to everyone. They're not picking sides, they're not making judgment. They are here to hear exactly these types of things.
is
I
this
mean,
a hearing tonight or a meeting?
it is a meeting. We're gonna be holding the public listening one. That's the one that said November 12th. That's gonna be for everyone.
Okay.
So that one's gonna be kind of the final, the big one in the end. I forget what they're calling it. The vision document. Public forum. They're calling it a forum. And that will be, again, the week of November 12th is what we're all aiming for. Hopefully I'm there. There's a chance I might not be, but that would be unfortunate.
Why is this gonna move so quickly? It just seems December 18th is really fast. Is it,
I agree. I think there was some concern that, well, not concern, but I think with the whole discussion about the new Beal, I think the feeling was at the time was ripe to show that there's also plans and that things are moving ahead with the old Beal at the same time that we're moving ahead with new Beal.
no, I just mean completing it that quickly. We're missing town meeting, we're missing the election. So to wrap it all up by the 18th just seems quick.
By the 18th of,
December, that's what this says there.
oh.
The document is gonna be ready December 18th.
I think the point is a 5-week completion time after the vote. Are we really gonna receive that thorough a report? That is my concern.
Right.
You know, where we've got,
Well, the vote's on the new Beal.
No.
yes, I know.
Understand that is
That's
what
Right.
I'm saying,
This is
but
all gonna become academic
If it fails.
yes.
Not necessarily. I mean, because again, this isn't just about the downtown, just about Beal. It's about the town center. And it's also looking at how Beal fits into the town center. But it's not, these suggestions will be able to go forward, I think, for the town center, regardless of what happens to Beal.
Right.
I mean, because we're looking at long-term, bigger picture. So, and there, I mean, it's gonna be connectivities from existing neighborhoods they're gonna be looking at. It's gonna be, you know, even something as simple as crossing streets, maybe somehow.
All of this in 5 weeks?
Yeah,
But it says.
I mean,
that-
but they've started now, so keep in mind that 5 weeks until December, they're starting that data collection now, so they're not gonna write it all on the last
and you
day.
got all the parking.
They're gonna start writing it up now as they start to collect it. I mean, you can ask them their methodology, but if that was me, that's I'm sure how I would do it. But it's also, you know, why wait? It's also why.
No, that isn't what I meant, I just meant, you know, it just seems like it's being done in a short period of time. $50,000 is a lot of money, 5 weeks.
And they're doing it says a 2-week, like a survey? Says they're doing
Yes,
some sort
yep.
of- So, are they making, I mean, I would think you'd have to wait until after you do your survey to start putting it all together.
Oh, yeah, certainly for parts of it, yeah.
So the survey's through November.
This
It
is, the
does seem
survey was
quick.
launched October 15th. It will be launched on October 15th.
Yep, so you can ask them about the timeline, so we worked with them on this during the proposal period, and they said it could be done. Okay, so we said, how about this time period, and they came back and said, yeah, we can do that, and we said it's pretty aggressive, they said, we know, we said, all right.
Okay, well, I guess we'll ask them.
Yeah, but you can ask them about their methodology and how they plan on doing that. We have some plans, and I'm sure we'll be helping out more with them getting that survey out and advertising it to get feedback.
Has this been awarded?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah,
yeah, this is the group that's doing it.
Right, that's what I'm saying, so, okay.
Does it include like the cost of these things, or is it just, here's what you could do, but it doesn't give you the cost of any of these items?
I think it's just a global view.
when you say the cost of each
Like
item.
if they're saying build, you know, make senior housing or make another sidewalk, are they gonna then give you the price of the new sidewalk or the price to renovate the building?
No.
Okay,
And they won't be saying, build this or build that, they will be saying, here's what you can do.
well, that's what I meant, but it's.
To build it,
We don't know
yeah.
what the cost of any
I just wanna
of these
make,
things
just keep
are.
making that clear, that, cause that can get lost in translation, that they're,
But that's what,
But
that's
that- no,
what-
it's-
that's what we're
yeah,
supposed to be trying to do is, these are
Give a
things like,
cost.
this could be done.
Just
Sure.
conceptual.
Yeah.
yep, this is conceptual, it'll be up to the town to decide what's within its affordability, like what can they do based on the costs, you know?
But we won't have the cost
Well,
of
they-
this study though.
No, that's
Okay.
not what they'd be doing.
So one of this, getting off them a little bit, but, I mean, one of the things that we talked about is, should this property be put on a tax roll? As opposed to being public housing or any other nonprofit. Which I think is something we're gonna need to consider.
So there is a section that we did ask them to include a section on market analysis. It's going to be somewhat high level, only because we understand markets are very, what's the word? Flexible, fickle, yeah, so I mean, what's working now or what's really, up there in terms of cost, what's bringing in the money could change, in 5 years' time. It may not stack up the way it does now, so we did ask them to include something like that. I'm sure it won't be as detailed for some, and I'm sure for others it'll be too detailed, but we did want to include it and have it, as part of this report. But again, you can ask them tonight about it,
If
and,
we work backwards from the completion date of the school, if it's approved, if we work backwards from there, you could probably start out a year, 18 months to try to solicit proposals. I think John's idea about having people come in and solicit proposals makes a good idea. Instead of being prescriptive and say we want this, we may put some parameters on it, but, let the market decide what will work there. Right.
Mo, if the school goes through, I know it's a big if now, it's up crystal balls, what's the best guess of a timeline? 2 years?
No, longer than that.
Longer, 3 years?
2020, what are we in, wasn't it 2023?
2022, substantial completion.
That's what I
Yeah.
thought, 2022.
Right.
So, 4 years.
Yeah, 4 years.
Call it 4 years, we're rough order.
Roughly.
So, to his point, and to the point you're making, there's a big, long runway there
Right.
where the findings, and I hate to sound flip, of this committee almost become academic in that
Right.
for that first year, if not for the first 2 years in that 4 year period, while to John's point, which I've always supported, we let people come in and see and et cetera. So there's a
think-
long runway.
I think it'll,
May I ask you, just a procurement question? If you auction off a property that's municipally owned, you have to turn that over within 30 days, don't you?
I don't know, Bob might know better than me.
No idea.
I couldn't answer that, I don't know for sure.
No
I think
idea.
the only time we do it is when we have tax title property, so I don't know.
Tax title has a whole process too. There's
No, but I mean,
Why,
when
John?
you actually
What
do
are
the
you getting
auction.
at, that if we decide to auction, we better have all the ducks in a row from the time we flip and say go kind of deal? If that's in fact the case?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have no idea if that's true or not, I have no idea what it is.
I don't know.
I believe any
Yeah.
bid that the state or municipals put out have to at least come to a final
Come to
contract.
terms, yeah, but the terms could be like a normal
What,
PMS,
even-
90 days, 120
No, I don't
days.
think it can, though.
Well, I have no idea, I'm speaking purely, I don't know.
But normally, do you have to award a bid in 90 days?
Chapter 149, 3039M, yeah, definitely.
It's awarded in 30 days, don't
30
you?
days.
Yeah.
Awarding the bid, but
Unless
that's not the same as
both
going to
parties agree.
contract.
No, but that is what
Then it
John's
You can
saying.
do that?
Who is a contractor, us as a town can do that.
We'll have to ask John,
Yeah.
what that is. Hey, Kevin or Kristen might know. Are you taking minutes?
I guess I am,
Okay, good. Kinda,
yeah.
that's good. Okay, well, I think with discussion, who's chairing that meeting over there? Whose meeting is that? Are we meeting here?
You're meeting here, yeah, we're gonna meet here. Planning board will leave about 10 minutes to 7 to start our
who's-
other meeting.
Whose meeting is this?
This is Horsley Witten's meeting.
I
Okay,
think it's posted as our meeting.
It's posted as, well, everyone's posted.
Yeah, it's
No,
a
but I
joint-
think it was posted as a Beal reuse.
It's a joint meeting.
It's a joint meeting, Beal, HDC, and planning board.
Okay.
So
I
we
know I
can,
saw Beal on the posting.
it's pretty
do you
informal.
need to go for a bit in between?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind having dinner
If
for my
anybody-
next 2
does
meetings.
anybody have a question for him?
But I'll be back
Yeah,
at 6.
we could
And,
ask other
Yeah.
questions, come back.
Yeah, but we can figure it out, how we're gonna run that. But
Oh, I was just, yeah, I should have asked.
I was gonna kind of let Nate from Horsley Witten. So actually,
We
it
can
should
run
be
it.
worth mentioning
So
that
wait, Mo, is that meeting at 7 or at 6?
It's at
Six.
6.
6, what's at 7?
planning board. So
Planning board meeting.
it can continue, that meeting can continue. Planning board will just adjourn their meeting here and go open their other one there. So everyone can keep talking to the consultant. We have to go.
All right, I'm gonna see you in a little bit.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, thank you.
So,
Thank you, Bernie.
Yep.
uh,
I move we recess till 6 P M.
No.
No, we
not
still
done.
have our
Back to number
meeting.
three.
Look at John trying to get out of this.
Yeah,
No, I wanna actually read this though.
well, how about,
In Shrewsbury's grand tradition of throwing your things at the meeting.
but
I think we need to discuss Mo's letter.
this,
Yeah.
this,
Well, our letter, essentially, not Mo's letter. That's-
well, it will be our letter, but I don't expect this to go through exactly the way it is,
Right.
but, take a look at it and see, what you think. Because if we can agree on something, and we can change this to whatever anybody wants, they're gonna throw it in the package for town meeting. It basically just says we're working on it. You have many moments of silence, Matt?
Not like this. Should we spell out what MSBA is, or is it assumed everybody knows what that is?
I think town meeting members will know what it
Okay.
is. We can change it.
I'm just asking.
I think it's excellent until we get till the end and start throwing out what suggested uses of the building.
Yeah, did we say that's what comments we got from the public hearing instead of?
I think we are almost compelled to do that, John. Compelled might be a strong word. I think the charter of this group was to come up with, at least when I first talked to Jim, and he asked me if I'd be interested in coming on it, if the Beals vote, when the Beal issue went to vote, Jim felt like there might be people in town that said, well, has anybody thought or considered what other uses of that space might be? And the ability was to say, yes, there's been a committee, and while nothing's binding, these are the thoughts and uses that they came up with.
Yes, but
Right,
we are
right,
specifically mentioning housing for those over 55 with a local preference for Shrewsbury residents.
So I think,
Why would we specifically
Yeah.
mention
Well-
that?
I think we could say senior housing, or,
Why would we
housing
even
for-
say that?
Well, but just,
because that's a consideration.
the idea was,
We've considered coffee shops.
what I was trying to get,
movie
yeah, but what I
theaters.
what I was
There's
trying to
been a lot
get
of
to
ideas
was,
thrown out here.
Yeah,
we could do these things, and maybe the word shouldn't be should, it might, it probably should be more like may, or might.
I don't mind speaking to parking because that's all part of the master plan.
So, John, I would.
I move that we strike housing to those over 55 with a local preference for Shrewsbury residents.
I would move that we replace it with, comma, affordable housing.
I think that's legitimate. I don't,
That was that's actually the reason I'm sitting here. I was elected through the housing authority. to be
You
on this.
certainly haven't concluded any work here
no.
as a committee yet, so you might.
But,
wanna
but, so
strike all
I
that
don't
and
think
say-
it should.
Strike
should-
all of it, that's
Strike all
fine.
and say that we're, future
Possible
uses are still
consider
under
uses.
exploration and consideration of this
Right.
group. To bring
Because
you a
once you say-
more final proposal.
Once you mention the housing over 55 with a local preference, you're
Yeah, we never said that.
leaning it towards
Okay.
that.
I think I'd leave it open because you still have this study coming,
That's right.
and then you still have to conclude our work before we have any findings.
And I would be very much against handing a federally funded housing authority acres of prime real estate in downtown
Well,
Shrewsbury.
first of all, with the housing authority hat on, just because this committee says, oh, we think that would be great housing authority, that's a Herculean leap until it becomes housing authority. That's a multi-million-dollar restoration job. That's getting federal money, state money. Just because it's here, it doesn't mean we can do it. Those are two separate entire issues.
Again, let us strike housing for those over 55.
But I think one of the possible uses could be affordable housing.
We,
I think
we need to have some kind of
Exists
a,
would be terrible
I
for
think we
us.
have to have some kind of a closing statement, so. Future considerations of uses of the building and or the parcel, should be of a scale befitting the center of town.
I'm just thinking, we're not recommending anything right
No.
now,
No,
so
these
that
aren't-
whole
these aren't
thing
formal
should be in
recommendations.
there.
Break the whole.
Yeah,
sentence.
so before even that.
Well, they're not
Just
full
put work
recommendations,
continues.
they're saying they're possibilities.
Just take the whole last sentence out?
Well, it says the committee recommends that in the event a new Beal school is approved, that the parcel be formally offered to the marketplace. We haven't said that yet.
Yeah, we
We haven't
did.
decided that.
Yeah, we did.
Oh, it's
Alright,
John's
let me see the
recommendation.
minutes.
I thought we were on the
I don't-
same, alright, well, hold on a second.
I
Then
think
why are
that's-
we
committee-
still meeting then? I don't know.
I think
Are
that's
we
where we're
still-
tending to lean.
Right, but we're not
No, we've
set
not
to
made-
say that's our
right.
recommendation yet.
That's right.
Okay,
I don't know,
alright, what do you wanna say?
that we're just still looking at all the options right now.
What is that, 15 minutes?
I, sorry.
Okay,
Different form. And I think that's what John had alluded to.
so, do you wanna put the committee will continue to work towards,
Potential uses.
Finding the most appropriate use for the site.
this?
Sounds good.
And besides those last three sentences that
Which are half the page now.
I think it's well-written and
Could we say the committee will continue to work on developing
The most.
potential
appro-
uses, for the site or most,
Appropriate use of the parcel.
for the parcel.
recommendations or suggestions?
Well, I think
The
the
committee will continue to work to find the most appropriate use of the parcel.
I have no problem with
Sure.
What?
No, I would agree. I think that's, you wanna make it
Okay,
broad,
that's fine.
because we haven't.
Yeah, it should be
Barely
open-ended, I
scratched the
agree.
surface on this.
Just leave it like that?
And are we standing down until December when we get the report back?
Actually, we might,
Or we
We
would go
might
to
have
some of their
another-
public hearings?
I talked to Kristen about that, and most of this report focuses on Beal, the study. So, when I talked to her, I said, okay, so what are we doing now? We're both doing the same thing.
Right.
And you have resources and we don't. She said, no, we're gonna work on it, but we're gonna work on it with the reuse committee and to help the reuse committee come up with recommendations.
The most appropriate use of the parcel.
Right, right, the most appropriate. So we'll probably have, we'll see how it goes. We'll
Okay.
probably have at least one other meeting
Okay.
before that. And I think we should, talk to Kristen, because I think she's officially overseeing this. I don't know if for her or Bernie, but, and ask that we meet with them to see a draft before they do the final. I mean, if we're gonna use that information, we should at least see what's gonna come out. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So maybe we'll have one sometime in November and probably have one at the beginning of December before they do the final, before they release it. Does that
it.
make
Will they
sense?
issue a draft statement?
Well, we'll ask them to do it. You're gonna have a public forum on the 13th, and not gonna have a document for another, almost 5 weeks, so, right? In December, well, at least a month. Yeah, we should be able to get a draft, see the final draft. Seems to make
So
sense.
maybe
It's a, yeah,
December 10th, 11th, so.
Yeah, we'll play it by ear. What time works best for everybody? This one got mixed up because I didn't wanna have us have to
Yeah.
go to a meeting on Tuesday and then a meeting on Thursday.
No, that's fine.
But what time?
6 is good for me.
Thursdays are difficult for me due to a family member's
Okay.
medical issues.
So are we talking days or times?
Well, I'm talking days.
Oh,
Tuesdays
okay.
and Thursdays are difficult for me.
Okay, so Monday or Wednesday?
I would appreciate that.
Is that okay with everybody else?
Wednesdays are tough for me, but Mondays are better.
Mondays are fine, but 6 is better for me
Yeah.
due to putting kids to bed and stuff like that.
So we'll narrow it down to probably shoot for Monday.
That's what we were doing, was Mondays.
I think,
Yeah.
didn't we,
Yeah,
yeah,
we were
am I
doing
having deja
Mondays.
vu all
Yeah.
over? Did we
Yeah.
just all agree on the
Right.
same thing
What
at the
happened
same
was,
time?
part of what happened was,
We're very
I
consistent.
have another committee that, with the Public Land Committee, to look at, what, to look at the parcels of land and see if there's any, restrictions or any designations, so, when we do go forward for a public project, whether it's for a school or it could be police station or whatever, and start looking at parcels that some basic work is already done, so, you know, somebody look at a piece of land and they go, oh, wait a minute, this is conservation land, all right, you're gonna throw it, more than likely, you're gonna throw it out of the mix. So, I'm doing 2. So, and you got,
And when is that on Mondays?
it doesn't have to be on Mondays, no, but what just happened was, we're trying to keep that, build a little momentum on it, and so, and then I'm gonna be away, and we were trying to squeeze everything in, at least get one meeting in before the end of the month. So, that's what happened this time, time just got away from us. But, do you wanna adjourn until 6 o'clock?
So moved.
Okay. Motion second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, this meeting is adjourned. We'll reconvene here at 6 o'clock. Meeting with the Horsley Witten Group, who's doing a study for us up at the town center in Beal School. So to start the meeting, we have 3 boards here. Each board has to call their meeting to order, but the Beal Reuse Committee just recessed because we started our meeting earlier, so I have a motion to reconvene the meeting.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Okay, the motion is second, all those in favor? Opposed? Okay. The other boards wanna?
I move to open the planning board meeting for today, October 4th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I'd like to move to open the Historic District Commission meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Gentlemen, Claire?
Thank you.
Yeah?
Good evening. My name's Claire O'Neill. I'm with Mass Development, quasi-public agency. And we're delighted to be here working with the community through our pre-development assistance program. And we provided a $50,000 award for the town to be working with us and with our consultants, Horsley Witten Group. I'd like to introduce Nate Kelly from Horsley Witten Group. And then in addition to that, Jeremy Lake is with Union Studios, acting as a subcontractor to Horsley Witten. We're delighted to be with you this evening to start the conversation about visioning for the Beal school site and also for the downtown. There's going to be quite a few different things. I noticed that a couple of you have the scope of service. We're going to be working with you over the next few months to look at all of those things. It would be really helpful to me and to the gentlemen here today if we could perhaps go around the room quickly and just folks let us know your name and also your affiliation, which of the boards or the town centre association you're with. And I missed out, for me, most important piece of information. I'm a Shrewsbury town resident as well for about 20 years. Love the community. I haven't been before the planning board.
No, I just thought we'd
Is
just.
that what a proper Shrewsbury accent sounds like?
Yes, absolutely.
Mel, you wanna start?
I'm Mel Gordon. I'm a member of the planning board for 2 more years.
I'm Ben Tartaglia, town meeting member from precinct 6.
Joseph Thomas from Planning Board.
John Masiello from the Beal Building Committee and Reuse Committee.
Angela Snell, I'm the Director of Parks and Recreation, and I'm on the Beal Reuse Committee.
Bernie Hale, I'm the town planner.
Bob Cox, I'm on the Historic District Commission as well as the Beal Reuse Committee.
Mark Paulo, Board of Selectmen and Beal Reuse Committee.
Steve Boulay, Planning Board.
Paul Campanello, Beal Reuse Committee, and Shrewsbury Housing Authority, and those two are connected because I'm on the Reuse Committee as a set of eyes for the Shrewsbury Housing Authority, and a town resident for over 50 years.
Kathleen Cohen on the planning board.
I'm Ellen Dolan, I'm the library director. I also serve on the Shrewsbury Town Center Association.
Melanie Petrucci, town resident for 18 years, transplant from Colorado. I'm on the board, Shrewsbury Town Center Association with Ellen, and have been with my friend to my left, John Campbell, on the Historic District Commission for
7 or 8 years.
oh, at least. So I'm wearing two hats. The
I'm
same.
John Campbell, Chair of the Historic District Commission and a town meeting member.
Great. What about behind us? Who do we have?
My name's Carl Ekstrom. I'm a resident and interested in helping out with the Shrewsbury Town Center.
Ian Gregory, also a resident and just recently joined the Town Center Association.
Priscilla Billingham, same as these two gentlemen.
Hi, I'm Moira Miller, Board of Selectmen, and I'm also serving on the Town Center Association.
Kevin Davier, Principal TC. I'm just interested in listening to the group. I'm have a new office in the area, so I saw it on the website and want to learn more about Shrewsbury.
Sorry, what was your name?
Kevin Dandry from
Kevin.
TC.
Thank you.
So we were introduced, Nate and Jeremy, from Horsley Witten Group. I see some familiar faces here. Good to see you all again. As Claire mentioned, we have a little bit of history with the community. We've done a couple of projects here, probably most notably, most relevant to this work was the Community Master Plan. I think that was adopted in 2012. So it's been a little while since I've spent some time in the community, but it was great to be back today. Got here around lunchtime and started looking around at some of the, the places that I hadn't seen in a little while. It's been some incredible investment in the community since 2012 and 2013, which is great to see. Certainly at different scales, but even in the town center, I remember a few rundown looking buildings when I left here in 2012, and I see some buildings that have been spruced up, and it certainly has been some investment along the way. So that is great to see, and it is great to be back here. We're excited to be part of this. So for those of you who have read through, maybe for example, the scope of work that we had submitted to Mass Development and the town, we are on a fairly accelerated process here, but we do want to do as thorough a look as we can at really two issues that are certainly complementary. One being looking at the town center as a whole. When we were here in 2011, 2012, 2013, there was a lot of discussion about the town center, whether or not it was living up to its potential, trying to deal with the traffic issues, the enormous volume of both automobile and truck traffic that you have going through there. When I was here, there wasn't the library. That's sort of a new thing for me to look at today, which is absolutely fantastic. And it's already serving as a draw. As we saw today, the youngsters coming out of school aren't only going to Dunkin' Donuts to get their sugar fix, but they're going over to the library and hanging out and spending some time, being studious maybe. But just enjoying the area. They were there for the entire afternoon as we were looking around, sort of sharing that space with them. So we have a sense of what the challenges were 5-6 years ago. We think that some of those challenges are probably the same. But in terms of the work that we're doing, the discussion that we want to have tonight is going to help us inform a few things. We are going to be developing a survey that's going to go out probably in a couple of different formats. We have a tool, for example, where we can use a map to allow people to zoom into the town center and place little comments on the map, sort of a map geographic survey. And that's generally pretty open-ended. What are your favorite places? Where do you think there are challenges? Some of the questions that we want to go over tonight with you. But we also want to develop more of a traditional survey where we ask the types of questions that are really going to help the town take the temperature of the public on different issues, gauge awareness, and also generate substantive ideas that we can start to put on paper. So, my expertise is in more the community planning, and I also write a lot of zoning and do a lot of local regulatory reform. So that's the lens that I'm gonna be looking at this project. Jeremy is an urban designer and an architect. We work hand in hand a lot, so he can provide that perspective of how things evolve, how things can grow and develop, and the design aspect of it, and I can think about the infrastructure and the zoning and those sorts of things that come together in the end. So that's really how we're approaching this. I think as far as tonight's discussion, we have a small group, we can keep it very informal. I do have sort of a few questions that I wanna bring to the group, but, if you have any questions, generally about the project, like I said, we're gonna develop a survey in a couple of different formats in advance of town meeting, and that will stay open through and beyond town meeting. Then we're gonna take the results of those surveys and we're gonna use them to design a public forum where we'll have people come and do some interactive exercises with us. The exact content of that remains to be seen because we have things that we need to learn from you, and we'll bring that into that space and create exercises to answer the questions that have arisen thus far out of that process. And then we'll develop some concepts for you, both visual and regulatory, that we think will help you take the next step. So that's kind of the overarching process. Any questions on that? No? Okay. So, you're the experts, right? You are living here for up to 50 years. So.
I only said that to be smart lifter. Just thinking very broadly, we like to think about what people love and what people want to see change, what people may not love so much. So, with that in mind, what I'd like to hear from you first, if this is okay, is what do you think are the greatest assets of the town center today from your perspective? What are the things that really, when you get, I really like that needs to stay, or this is a great opportunity? What are the great assets as far as you're concerned?
The library and the common.
That library is phenomenal. Other folks?
You're welcome, Ellen.
Oh, Mr. Chairman. Okay, I just, from the Historic District Commission point of view, wrote this to the master plan. We want to see the town center as a vibrant, attractive, walkable area with many events, cultural and educational events at the library like they do now, at the church, they do on occasion, the 1830 schoolhouse, even the funeral home has had choral music and things a few times. Would like to see the common used, which is used now. Right now they have the, what do they call it, the scarecrows on the common. Yep. We got a coffee Sunday at the common. Funeral home sponsors Santa Claus Christmas thing on the common. We have caroling on the common. So I think the center is in good shape, but it certainly could be improved with more cultural events and more attractive. There's a lot of parking in the center of town, but it's kind of funny parking, there's library parking, there's funeral home parking, church parking, 1830, schoolhouse parking, cemetery parking, and about 3 others. And it's quasi-shared, but not completely, no formal agreement.
All right, you're jumping ahead a little bit. We are gonna get to the challenges. But that is something that we've definitely heard.
And the one thing I'd like to see, I'll let everybody else talk after this, is the Beal School, if it decided we tear it down, I'd love to see some of that come back on a tax roll. And I think the front of on Main Street could be 3 or 4 attractive restaurants, coffee shops, things that would attract people to the center of town. And the rear of it could be parking. That's it.
Other folks, assets, yes.
The World War I memorial.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think the Beal Reuse Committee said that whole thing was gonna be moved 5 feet to the right.
Other ones, any other folks? Other assets, what do you like?
I like the lamps.
Lamps, good.
They're very pleasing, very historic,
Yep.
in keeping.
We commented today about how, you know, it doesn't go unnoticed to someone who's in community planning. You took the lamps all the way back to the church parking lot and the fire station. I mean, that's just kind of a, you know, just shows that little extra effort on the part of the town, which is nice.
Actually, the church is, I think, a gem.
The church,
I mean, it is a beacon, you can see it from far away.
Yep.
It's a focal point.
Another asset is institutions in the center of town that bring people in, such as the schools, you know, St. Mary's School, the church, as you mentioned, Beal School, other things like that there.
Nathan, when you're talking about the center of town, on parking,
Right.
we were down, but when we had the meeting with the people who did the parking study, we were really down to like St. Mary's, you know, going down
On the hill there.
Main Street.
Yep.
Are you talking about that small, tight center?
Well,
Or
that's
are you talking about something a little bit broader?
That is up for discussion. You know, we've been thinking about that same question ourselves, you know, where we were, actually, maybe Jerry, I'll give you a chance to talk about your triangle.
Well, there's certainly an identifiable center, so there's no confusion about where the center is, the town common. And we noticed there was a particular character that extends effectively from the library to the Beal School and up the town common to the church. That sort of zone really is the town core, the town center, and it has its own particular character. What's interesting is when you get beyond that, it pretty quickly transforms or changes, again, a little bit depending on which direction you're going. North, south, it's a little more residential, east, west, residential slash, you know, professional office sort of uses. And then there's Maple Avenue, right, which is its own sort of character in terms of being a little more auto-centric. So we saw a couple of different characters, again, an identifiable center, but one of the conversations we were having is when we're talking about this process we're about to go through, how much are we sort of concentrating and really focusing the effort on the literal center versus how much do we want to try to talk a little bit about some of those edges? If so, which edges? Are we concerned about the residential areas, or is it really Maple Avenue that's the big concern in addition to the town center? So a little bit of that is what we're hoping to get out of these kind of conversations as well.
Yeah, and I think there's a few different ways to think about it. One of the ways that we were, at least that I certainly kept coming back to today, was the fact that, you know, I wouldn't call the middle school part of the town center, but it's one of the most important audiences for your town center. So it's something that it's in the back of my mind as I'm thinking about it, as a planner who goes from community to community to community, seeing, you know, I don't know, if I saw 100 kids in town center today, I mean, that is an asset in and of itself that, you know, you as residents, you probably just are so used to seeing that, you may take that for granted. But that kind of, you know, just having a bunch of kids in your town center, that kind of diversity, that kind of vibrancy, even if they do chase you out of Dunkin' Donuts at that time of day, is something, you know, that's important to keep in mind. So it's about the audience, and it's about sort of these physical pieces too.
There are people behind.
Yeah, just once again on that, the fact that the center of town really is a center. That's certainly one of the things that attracted us here originally, was that it had a center. In terms of the walkable access and the conversation you just had, I think that's something we've seen with children here in the town. So I've had children who needed to go from Patton School to the church, or Beal to the library, or the middle school, up to the library, for example. And there's always the concern about safety, the safety of walking, and end up on many occasions having to drive, which is really disappointing in those situations where it's very readily walkable, but to improve the, so it doesn't seem like the priority is just getting traffic through town, but also getting people on foot through town. Similarly, when I think the parking thing is a real opportunity to sort out the parking, and I was hearing this morning there's something like 2,000 spaces in the center of town. You wouldn't believe it, but they're about 2,000, a little bit private, but integrating that with where people want to get to by foot, so they don't have to drive across 140 to go from the church to the library, for example.
Maureen, did you have something?
Yeah, so, we're talking about what assets, what I like, in the center, in the common area, I like the common, I like, it has a feel about it that is very welcoming. I like what has been done with the historic markers along there. I like that there are benches, and I know that there are walkability issues in town, but I like that right now it is a place that I can go to Dunkin' Donuts and get a coffee, and I can then walk to the center and I can sit. And I like to sit there and, you know, I can watch the, you know, people going by or whatever. So that's one thing I really enjoy about the center is it kind of has a welcoming atmosphere to just kind of sit and pause.
Okay, great.
Mo, are there extra copies of the?
There's a few, yeah.
Is it okay?
We'll get a couple more. So that's on that way.
All right, so through that discussion, I think we've got an excellent list there to get us going. You know, a couple of folks slipped into our sort of next topic are these challenges. So we understand that maybe it's not so much the volume, or, you know, there are others who are working on this issue, but understanding the parking in the town center seems to be a challenge for folks. We've had somebody say that, you know, there are safety issues in terms of whether it's kids or any other pedestrian crossing the street and getting around, in and around the cars that are running through there. What are some other challenges to this area you think that we should be potentially focusing on as we're developing our survey or having other discussions with folks?
In terms of parking?
In terms of anything in the town center, loosely defined.
Came out in the study, but I think we all knew it. The access to the parking that's available, and people being aware of where the parking is. Because we have a lot of parking, but almost all of it is private.
Right. Okay.
We're one of the few towns I can think of that kind of a major state highway runs right through our downtown. And Route 140 with a connection to Route 20 and 290 is very heavily truck traversed. And combine that with the postal facility, you wind up with trucks making wide turns in intersections that really aren't meant for that. And that turns into, you know, I'm through there half a dozen times a day, and at least once a day, there's a big truck trying to turn off of 140 down to Maple Ave,
Right.
or, you know, taking even taking the left coming up onto Maple Ave, they wind up cutting off the whole intersection.
Right.
I think we need to look at maybe truck restrictions downtown. You know, obviously you're not gonna stop trucks from driving down 140, but maybe not allowing them to take right turns.
Try to establish a route.
Yeah.
Okay. Other challenges? Yes, sir.
I was gonna say, one of the challenges, we have one, I'll call it a decrepit building in the center of town, the Empire Dry Cleaning Building. I don't know what the status is, I understand there was some environmental issues with it. Town didn't want to take up the taxes, it's empty right now and deteriorating, I don't know what's happening there, but that's obviously probably the biggest eyesore we have in the center of town, the Empire Dry Cleaning Complex.
We looked at that today.
That's been a dry cleaners for 40 or 50 years. The solvents used in dry cleaning are nasty, and they spread very quickly through the ground.
And I think that's why it's empty.
That's right.
And I think that's why nobody.
That's why the
has-
town doesn't want it either.
Because the town doesn't want it, I don't think anybody wants it.
No.
I mean, the cost to clean that up would be, I can't even guess the cost.
You had a comment?
I had a few, I don't, might affect your planning. 140 from 290 down to Grafton that area, I'm surprised no one mentioned how great our town hall looks. And to the right rear of that is the senior center. And we have parking problems over there, but I think when we redo the police station, they're gonna look at adding some more parking down that area. And there is, I was over at the fire station meeting the other night, there's actually quite a bit of parking behind the fire station. You don't see it from the road, if you go down Church Street, I'll bet you there's 50, 60 park, I've never seen that filled. And of course, there is parking behind the church there too, but this is behind the garage that you see, sort of diagonally right when you go to the fire station. My thing that I wanna see is, I'd like to see, I don't know if it's possible, but I've been working on this for 2 years now, talking to people, getting information, is turning Beal into senior housing under the Shrewsbury Housing Authority. Because we are very short on housing authority. Of course, we have no money to do it. That's the big thing there. But I know Natick's done a great job with theirs. They got 45 units out of the whole school. I guess that's all I have for notes here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Just a couple other things. The parking lot of the church you referred to, there's been some discussion around that because it belongs to the church. And so that they're talking about how to try to open that up with some partnership with other groups. It has been used quite frequently now for carpooling. Maybe something to consider, that's people coming to the center of town to pool cars to travel to work. And the other thing is that it seems to, I don't know what causes it, but there's a reasonable turnover in the businesses right in the center of town. I think there's 2 places that are vacant. What was the Center Cafe, and I think the Pet Place just closed.
Did it?
Just,
It's
well, they're
relocated.
moving somewhere else that's going vacant there, but I don't know what is causing those businesses to, the turnover or moving out, whether it's rents or what other, but that's certainly an area that's certainly very attractive to develop. It's a really nice spot, but the businesses don't seem to, Willie's has been there, I think, for a long time, and Michi's, but the others, it's quite a bit of turnover.
Yeah, excuse me, the town common is not the town common, that's owned by the church.
No, there is no, nobody knows for sure if the town owns it or the church owns it.
Keep asking permission.
It's a courtesy.
It's a courtesy,
Church doesn't want it,
Well,
I'll tell you that.
well, that's an option.
that's another story.
That sounds like a can of worms.
I have a comment about the parking at, talking about doing parking at Beal, or what would happen to the ball field that's there?
Well, one of the things that the reuse committee had talked about is the possibility of finding another field, another place for that field, so that it opens up the rest of that parcel for some kind of development, whatever we're gonna do. But again, that involves finding another place for the field, because we can't just eliminate the field. But that was one of the things we talked about in the reuse committee, and I'm sure that'll come up again as this study goes on.
I was just gonna mention, I was out of the room, so I don't know, maybe someone already said it, was the number of curb cuts along Maple. It makes it really unpedestrian friendly to cross so many lanes of, well, not lanes, driveways and open pavement and no markings and clarity on where pedestrians and cars, one type of traffic and the other ends and begins,
Right.
can lead to dangerous situations. And safety crossing Maple, did someone mention that? Because that kind of always comes up in my mind when I think about the students at 3 o'clock walking down the street, is the speeds on that road, and maybe some bulb outs at some of the crosswalks might be a possibility there. For those who don't know, that's just kind of concrete when they bulb. It's exactly what it sounds like. It just bulbs out the concrete, makes the distance shorter, cars slow down. But I think the speed and that safety of crossing back and forth across Maple is definitely a challenge.
I have to say, we do a lot of this work, and I was pretty, I didn't have a radar gun out, but I was pretty surprised at what I saw today in terms of the speed that people were going through the main intersections. It was
That's what I was gonna say, one of the issues kind of related to what John said, but what Bernie is talking about, there's no like visual cues coming in from Maple Street or from 290 down Boylston saying you're coming into the town center. There are street signs, but people don't pay attention to those signs, but there's no visual cue that you're really coming into a congregated, really tight area.
And to that point, every approach into our town has a 45-mile-an-hour speed limit. Maple Ave, 140. I think 45 is excessive on Maple Ave, because now people are driving 50 and 55 down Maple Ave.
Going back to, the walking and the crossing, I think, for me, one of the everyday challenges of life is you'd like to go to the post office and then walk across the Dunkin' Donuts. And that's about a 15-minute chance to walk to the crosswalk and then wait to see if you're gonna be able to get across and then back again, So, there's no, this is like the curb cuts, if you're walking, there's no respect for walking.
You gotta be a slave to that coffee.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, we got a sense around 3 PM, folks are aware that the kids start
Yeah,
coming
you don't
out.
go then.
So there's
yeah,
maybe
right.
slightly different behavior at that time, but
Yeah,
the
right.
rest of the day, it's probably not that tough, right? Yeah.
But, like I said, that's just an example, I'm just giving an example of,
Yep.
that, if when you talk about making it walkable, well, we got a long ways to go.
Mhm.
When you're heading down, heading west on Main Street, through the center of town, past the Rite Aid, and you're continuing on down, there's a yield for cars turning from Maple onto Main to go west. Nobody yields.
It's our own little Kelly Square.
Right. I yield, because I'm perfect. No.
Whatever the tunes say.
But no, nobody yields. It's a problem.
There's another dangerous intersection. You're going north on 140 past the library on your right. And then Prospect and 140 veer off.
Right.
Well, there's a little cut through.
Yeah.
When you come down, when you're coming, I guess it's south on Prospect, and you wanna go to the center, you have to hang right and then a quick left. And 140's going right past that. That is probably the worst intersection in town, in my opinion. And it's, I don't know what we're gonna do about that, but that is horrid. And if it's rainy or dark, big trouble there.
True.
I don't know what the name of that little street is though. You come down and you have to do that right and left.
Marion?
That's
No, the next, no, the one
That's still-
closer.
It doesn't
Laurel? Laurel?
Loring?
Laurel?
Loring.
Oh, Laurel. I-N-G, okay.
Just follow on with a comment, I think, about the town common, which is really is, like you said, it's a very attractive part of the center of town all times of year. But it's underutilized, and I don't know, sort of brainstorming could be to how to encourage more use of that space, and whether, for example, that do you need as much blacktop around there as you have? For example, there's the road that goes right in front of the church, but arguably, I don't know if that's really necessary. You can get through the back of the church, back around past the fire station, back onto Maple. If that's not needed necessarily, you can green that over right up to the front of the church.
I think the fire
Fire
department
station.
is
Oh, is that a fire? Okay.
You can go north and south on 140.
Okay, so
That's
that's,
where they shoot out,
Yeah, they come out that.
straight out of their driveways down that road.
that kind of cuts that space up there that would otherwise, you could connect the historical society. That's true.
If I go back to the church owning the parking lot, the common,
They don't.
I thought, excuse me, I thought back in colonial days, you couldn't become a town unless you had a church in the center of town.
This is 2018 though.
I know it is, but I'm just saying, I thought that's why, I always thought it belonged to the church, because you had to have that to get your charter as a town. So that doesn't count on who owns it?
It's complicated.
Well, yeah.
is also when a town incorporated, if the town was gonna incorporate, the common was supposed to be turned over to the town, so that's a whole nother story. Historical Society probably does stuff on that, right, John? Do you have anything else you wanna move on to, or just wanna
Yeah, I
let
mean,
this thing flow?
I think we're in a good spot. I want to, maybe, hone in a little bit more specifically. Like I said, one of the things, that we need to do that's gonna be an important part of our, sort of fact-finding or opinion-finding, is to develop a survey. So, based on your experience, it would be helpful to us just sort of brainstorming, from your perspective, whether it's about the school or whether it's about the sort of broader questions about the town center. What kind of questions, what kind of ideas do you think it's gonna be important for us to solicit with the broader public?
I think we need to ask people what their thoughts are about what to do with the Beal property if that school is no longer needed. I think that's one. I think the other one is ask people generally what they would like to see more of in the center, more businesses, or what kind of businesses they would like to see.
Or any businesses.
Right, exactly.
This is not a real friendly business town. I'm sorry to say.
And if it doesn't make the question too long in the survey, I think maybe a small piece should be added, whether or not it's zoned for it, currently zoned or allowed, some sort of language like that. So what use would you like to see out Beal, whether or not it's allowed at this time, like currently an allowed use? Just for us planning, thinking ahead as a planning board and planning department for zoning, that could yield some results, I don't know, like, just to get people thinking, maybe they want a restaurant, but it's not zoned for restaurants, I think it is, but just for example.
Understood, yeah.
And we can stay, just, I don't know if anyone told you before we started, the planning board has to leave in about 20 minutes, but this room is yours as long as,
So-
you wanna.
Let's make sure that people on the planning board get the opportunity, because you're gonna leave at 5 minutes to 7. So,
I guess I would echo a lot of the comments that were made earlier in terms of the challenges and so forth that are going on. I think one of the things that I would like to make sure is, does the architecture form, like when you're in right across from the common area, you've got this very, I don't even know what decade you'd want to represent it, but it's definitely old, right? And then how it transitions out to a new, do you want that, or do we want to try to come up with some architectural type of requirements for the downtown area?
So you wanna sort of take the temperature on, how specific they wanna get in terms of requiring details, whether it be architectural or form or that, that type of thing. Other things. So think about, sort of think forward and imagine that, a year from now, you're gonna go forward maybe with some new zoning for this area of town. Like, what are people gonna be worried about? What are we, what kind of information do we need to tease out of the public to make sure we understand what their concerns are?
I think
behind you. Where?
No, but, I was just saying, I don't know, I'm thinking, well, wouldn't you ask on any survey, wouldn't you ask people why they currently come to the town center, or why they don't come to the town center? To kind of give it an understanding, and what would make it more attractive or comfortable or easy for them to do so?
Okay.
Jay, do you have some?
Yeah, I think to Maureen's point, is the traffic in the center of town, that 140 intersection, I think that deters a lot of people at the 4, 5, 6 o'clock hour. I have no idea how you could rectify that, but I think that's a major problem, is that the traffic at that intersection for a good 3 hours a day is horrific, and people avoid it as much as they can. So I think that's a major thing. I also think that asking people, and I know this probably doesn't sound the best, but asking people what they want isn't you don't probably always get what's best for the town by giving people what they want and not necessarily what the town needs, as far as the Beal project goes and things of that nature. So I think it's good to ask, but I also think we need to keep in mind what's best for the town too.
And sometimes we handle that, if you know there's sort of in the end, a couple of realistic options, ask them which they prefer of the realistic options, so you don't get back the like, oh, let's put in a zip line, ropes course, you know, the kind of stuff you're like, okay, that was nice, but you know, that's not really what we're talking about
That would be
here.
pretty good for the center of the block.
I was gonna hold that for a little while, but I already let it out.
Avoid the intersection and just zip line it.
Zip line right over from the
Zip line
middle
from
school right to the
library.
library, right? Yeah.
There is a couple of other traffic things. People are coming,
That's right.
coming north on Main Street to get the lights at the center, and they wanna turn left. The complaint I've heard a lot is like, you get one, maybe two cars through there, and then it cuts off. That's a timing problem, but that seems to be a real problem. Also, down at 140 and Lake Street, thank God they put in a traffic light there. But now, since I live on a road there, they almost cut right up our street, Kenilworth. And then they go out, they either go around Monroe, or they go down around Hapgood to get past the congestion at the center. And it's really bad sometimes, I mean, and they're always in a hurry. So I don't know how to solve that. It's just something that happened. The light was really needed, but now it,
Creates a new issue,
and
yeah.
Hapgood can be a real raceway because it's a straightaway. It looks like you can go fast there.
John, do
Yes, I hope that as we're getting public opinion on what most appropriate use is, we tend to get out the message that we have a very lopsided zoning in this town, and that we're very heavy residential. We do not have a healthy tax base. I think we're at 13% commercial industrial versus 87% residential versus untaxed. We have an opportunity to take 4 acres of prime downtown real estate and put it back on the tax roll. And I want that to be stressed to people.
So it might be, as far as the survey is concerned, it might be interesting to test different benefits. So for example, one benefit might be to diversify housing opportunities. Another benefit might be to increase recreational access. Another benefit might be to increase your tax base. And maybe on a survey, we sort of list out a bunch of these different benefits and have people prioritize those and get a sense of what the public's thinking on that.
I don't even think housing should be a consideration.
Yeah, but that's your opinion, John. We're trying to get
No, but
people's
we
opinions.
are trying to get this back on the tax roll.
We
and
could,
I'm
we
hearing
could get it back on the tax roll if it was a housing, if it
fancy
was private.
condos. Yeah.
So, I think we need to hear what people wanna say. Steve, did you have something?
I just wanted, I apologize for coming late, but also I think that the Lakeway overlay district is a pretty good example of kind of what to do and what not to do. That when we enacted the Lakeway bylaw, you know, we probably had this overlay district that the only place in the Commonwealth you could have built it is at the seaport, because that's the only place that the economics would work. And it ultimately took a developer to come in and tweak our bylaw. You know, the developer came in and suggested certain changes to the Lakeway bylaw to make it feasible. So I think we have to be cognizant, again, is kind of dovetailing on what Jay said, that you can't let everybody's desires conflict with what we ultimately think the market will bear. And maybe there's a housing component in it, maybe there isn't. Right? I think we have to be flexible and certainly be cognizant of what the market wants, because that's gonna dictate what happens there. So it took 10 years or more to finally have someone who was willing to proceed under the Lakeway bylaw, albeit albeit after some town meeting tweaks.
Alright. Do folks have a sense of, sort of is there a strong reaction to the question, how long should this survey be? Like, if this survey takes more than 20 minutes to fill out, are we dead in the
20
water?
minutes.
Yeah, I was gonna say 10 minutes.
Yeah.
10 minutes.
People now have attention span of gnats, so I would, 5 or 10, no
Yeah.
more than that.
10 questions, 5 minutes.
Alright.
Double space.
Big font.
Yes.
Two inputs on questions. One maybe to get a general idea of what sort of feel that people want to see promoted in center of town. Is it more a historical feel, maintaining the history? We've got a number of things that have been recently done in town to sort of emphasize the history and promote that. Is that more important, or really modernization, or sort of thoughtful modernization that's taking care of the history? I'm thinking that Beal is part of the history, that school there. If that disappears, what replaces it? And what replaces it would likely be a big determining factor in how the whole town feels. That's one thing. The second thing is maybe on the questions, an open question to people on what they'd like to see is good, but also a more guided response, where you're prompting people in terms of businesses. You list potential businesses, cafes, hairdressers. What is it? For parking is electric car charging. This is coming rapidly. So some of these forward-looking things to prompt more specific that people may not think about, but once prompted, to get you a good reaction.
This isn't a question to be on a questionnaire, at least I wouldn't know how to put it, but should we be encouraging businesses that are busier off-peak? Lakeway Commons has a really good mix as an example. They have restaurants that use their parking lot heavily at night, and they have other businesses that are heavier during the day. With traffic up the center, being what it is in the morning and the afternoon, I don't know if we're going to encourage business, do we want to look at places that actually are not as busy during rush hour, maybe off-peak? I know restaurants are, they're on the edge of it at the evening, but is there a way to look at that and see if that's possible? If we put more, I guess, on Saturday morning, if we put more traffic in the town center between 9 and 11, if we try to do it by enhancing the center and try to get more people up there, it's gonna be a disaster. So, I'm just wondering if there's a way to find businesses that would be busier off-peak and don't add to the peak demand.
It's hard to, we'll get into this as we go along. It's very hard to require something like that.
No, not require it, but encourage businesses that.
There are ways in terms of the information that you ask and, maybe the way that your folks who are involved in economic development, the way they court businesses, there are ways to guide that process.
If we were to develop the Beal parcel, if the town could regulate that in a sense, because if we put it out for sale, we could put conditions on that part of it. The rest of the private businesses, I know it would be really hard. But I don't think we necessarily, in general, I think we want to let the market decide what's going to be best there. But on the other hand, I'm not saying we should, I'm wondering if we could, I'm wondering if it's even possible. We could put restrictions on what can be on that property. We've done it in other parts, other zones where,
Yeah, as the seller, you're sort of in the driver's seat on some of those issues.
Yeah, on that particular parcel, I think we can. I know we can't in the rest of town, but maybe you can do it with enticements and through overlay districts with zoning or whatever.
So before the planning board folks run out the door, one other question that we wanted to get to is a very specific question. So we want to raise awareness of this survey opportunity. Once this survey launches, we want to make sure as many people hear about it as possible, but we also want to make sure that you know, we sort of advertise it in a way that gets people thinking and sort of draws them in, to that. And so we were batting around a lot of ideas, you know, should we show, you know, renderings of what the Beal school could be, and then people were saying, well, no, that's gonna make it look like we've already decided, and that's not the point of this process. We're trying to get, you know, feedback into this. So if we were to develop, like an ad or a flyer or an e-blast, are there any sort of, you know, in your mind, are there images or graphic representations or ideas that you have that you think would be compelling to, you know, when somebody opens it in their email and say, oh, I wanna, you know, that doesn't make them angry that we've already decided about the Beal School and we haven't, but just sort of draws them in and is compelling.
I think there's a way that you can frame that. You can have some renderings, but I think there's a way that you can get the message that this is just, you know, just throwing out ideas. Let us know what you think, without people thinking, oh, it's already a done deal.
Do we have anybody on the planning board who wants to speak? Because I want to make sure you guys get the time, the ladies. No? Okay.
I think the most difficult thing is finding the right manner in which to get the surveys out with the response times that you're looking for. So other than just mass mailing to every single resident in hopes that somebody's gonna send something back.
What's your timeline again for opening
You know,
and closing?
We wanna open it about a week before town meeting. We could, if we get it together before then, we'll get it together before then, but you know, it's right
Closing
around.
though?
And then closing is, you know, maybe a week, 2 weeks after.
Do you think we'd be in a position to be able to hand out the survey at the polling places? Because let's face it, the people who are registered voters and participated are the ones who are gonna, more than likely.
It's a good idea.
It's November 6th.
Yeah.
When was town meeting, November 13th?
Town meeting, we could,
Town meeting.
we have a town meeting on the 22nd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if it's ready, we could have them there.
Is it an online survey or
It will
online
definitely be,
and-
well, that's another question. It's definitely gonna be online.
Okay.
Do you think it's important to have hard copy distribution?
Yes.
See, I,
For like, yeah,
No,
for
I
the
do.
senior center and stuff like that,
You gotta
yeah.
understand how people function in this town. We get a lot of seniors, some don't even take email. So you're gonna get a disproportional response from the people who are on Facebook and Twitter and all that. You may be missing a major segment of your population. The best way to get, in my opinion, the best way to get something to them is use the electric bill. An insert in the electric bill.
it might not work in the timing, but I think you should have some, I think you should strongly encourage the electronic. And I think you're gonna get most of them electronic, but I think having some of them here, having it
Senior center.
out
Yeah,
in front,
stack it,
have them
senior
at the
center,
senior center, have them at the library. You know, maybe even though you printed them, you could, you try to drive people to the electronic site. But if they want to do it on paper, I think we should, the more you can reach out, the more participation you can get. Obviously, if you know it's gonna be a better sample, so.
Well, and certainly identifying a few spots, because that also obviously needs to be the collection point as well.
Right.
So if there were 2 or 3 locations, like the library and the senior center, that make the most sense, you could have
Right.
the surveys in the box and
Town
then.
hall, the library, and the senior center,
Yeah.
I would consider that.
It also seems like the under 18s are an important customer in this as well. I don't know whether running something through the schools, getting some structured input from the middle school, the elementary schools.
Reach out to Joe Sawyer.
Might be
Would you ask a question of, like, would you ask demographic questions like age or?
We can ask, well, I mean, yes, but now we're, you know, how many minutes and.
No, I'm just wondering how you do it, if there's any demographic question you're trying to figure out.
It'd be interesting to know the number of people in the household,
I would think
whether
if
it's
you put a
families
link-
answering it or individuals.
If you put a link on the town website, I think you could decent response. People look at that occasionally.
Excuse me, I just have to close the meeting for the planning board at this time. We'll reconvene in the regular selectmen.
Second.
Aye.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
More?
So I just want to say, I do think it's important to have capture some demographics. I think age, to me, would be interesting to see how people respond. And, I don't know, whatever else. I'm not so sure what email, female, I don't know that that matters. But I certainly think age, to me, would be interesting to see. Especially since we're building something not just for us today, but obviously for the future. We're trying to attract young professionals and people, to the center, so I think it'd be interesting to see how they all respond.
Every Thursday, 9 o'clock, at the senior center, I know I say senior center a lot, that's, there's about 75 or 80 guys that meet here every week, and you could arrange to actually hand them out at the beginning of the meeting and ask them to fill them out before they leave. Now, everybody's over 50, most of them are over 60, but you'd still get, first of all, you'd have a group, a demographic, but those people tend to be very knowledgeable. I think you get a lot, and maybe other groups that meet in mass. I think the town meeting's a great idea. You get there at town meeting, when the people are filing in, we start at 7, but you get there at 6. And as people go in, you hand them out these things and ask them if they can take a couple minutes and fill them out before they leave. It's like, why do you rob banks? That's because where the money is. If you want to get a survey done, you go where the people are. And they're already active, so you probably do it. I don't know if that'll work, but there's probably other pockets of people where there's good-sized gatherings. I would say churches, but that seems to be going away. You used to be able to go to the churches and find people.
Do you have another topic?
I did, I just wanted to circle back lastly, just again, any thoughts on some more of our marketing of it, if we're gonna use a particular, imagery or anything about that?
I would not lead the witness, my opinion. I would not give any renderings. Inevitably, a significant, I do a lot of the kind of what I do for a living, and a lot of the people will inevitably be drawn to the first thing that they see and think, even if they, people notoriously do not read emails, they do not read surveys, they'll see 2 pictures and think they're getting asked which is better, even if you don't use words even remotely to that effect. In terms of an overall image for the survey, I would do something very generic but very Shrewsbury. For instance, the Beal School with the World War I monument in front, or the town common with the church in the background. So they're drawn right to the space that they're talking about, but not being led down a path of, what do you like? If it's the Beal School, it's easy to say, I'm sure many of you are aware this may be phased out, and we're looking, and if it's a town common, you can say, there's a lot of development going on in the center and we're trying to get you. For my 2 cents, I would take one of those images and not put images of mock-ups or renderings.
Or,
That's my opinion.
maybe, just throw something up, church, the library,
collage.
like a collage, and, put the thing, the future of Shrewsbury out, or something with a question mark or whatever.
The center is changing.
Something, just show it, and people are gonna be drawn to it, something about asking about the future, I think very brief.
No, I agree, Mom. It's a similar answer to mine. I
Yeah.
completely agree. No, I'd be very reluctant to use any kind of rendering or mock-up, and very much in favor of doing a combination of Mo's suggestion or mine, and they're almost, they're hybrids. I mean, you can use your own creative, even if you do a blended image where the library is next to the, church is next to the thing, and it's kind of a header. I believe that image exists somewhere on the town hall banner, or on the header. I feel like I've seen some image where there's 3 or 4.
The website.
The town website. So I think if you go to the Shrewsbury website, they have a similar image. Now, I'd be willing to bet that that website has the town hall on it. I wouldn't use that one, but you'll get the
Sure.
idea of most collage.
Yeah.
The 2 or 3 buildings we've all just named.
Also, there's, if you tell somebody you're gonna, wanna meet them in the town center, they get very confused. I've been here 43 years now in town. When you say town center, half the people will figure it's Route 9, and half will figure it's up here with 140 across Main Street. So just be aware
So
of that.
it's town common?
The town common says
Is that
where it
the
is.
clearest?
Beal School says where it is.
Okay.
If you say town center, you know, it might need a little more clarification.
Okay.
Going back to the images and thinking about the introduction of asking questions about the town centre and the Beal School, do you think people understand, when people start thinking about a reuse of the Beal School, do you think they just think about the building rather than the fact that there's actually quite a lot of land
Some
Yes.
people do.
with it?
It's half and half. I think some people, again, that gets into the leading the witness. I think some people might think, oh, what do you wanna do, gut the building and make it senior housing? Or some people might say, oh, but I think you're gonna run half and half on that one. That's something that this committee has talked about. That I
You know what, I disagree. I don't think there's a lot of sentimental attachment to the Beal building anymore. because-
John, I went there, come on.
And
Fifth
you know
and
what?
sixth grade.
Let me finish. A lot of people remember, gee, that's the school where my kids sat and froze in 2nd grade. And isn't that the school that's loaded with asbestos and the old windows and the wind howls through and, you know, that building's tired and people in this town realize it. And I love that building. I think it's historically very representative of its time. It's a beautiful old building, but even empires fall. And I think that's how most of this town looks at that building now, that it's really outlived its usefulness. You know, your wife went to high school,
Yeah,
there, right?
she said to me, no, not grade school, and that was a long time ago, and she said, you know, it was a.
Knock it down.
Not to use that word, but there were, a lot of the issues we have today were there then.
That's right.
And of course, there's really no good handicapped access, not good for special education, not good for access.
No?
Well, we're not gonna use it for school anymore, that's for sure.
But I think those things.
If we get a new one.
I went to elementary school.
I think a lot of people look at it though, and it's like they're looking at, it's part of the common. You know, it's like the church. I mean, the church is in good shape, but there's some of it is when you go to the center, you think of Beal School. So I think there's a lot of people looking at it from the outside.
Yeah, it's a landmark.
It's a landmark, right.
Exactly.
And I've had a lot of people say to me, well, why can't we save it? And I said, well, go read the facility study and you know, it might, depending on what the use is, it may be able to be saved, it may not. But I think you're gonna get a mixed bag on it. And, you know, I think it's possible that the people who grew up in town, or went to school there, may be more attached to it than the people who moved in the past 10 or 15 years. Really,
I agree with Mo, that was my original point. I think it's a hybrid. That was my answer. I think you get it half and half.
So I guess the question is, should there be a survey question that says how important is it to the character of
Well-
town to preserve the Beal School, or should that site be made available for, no, and it's okay to get 50-50 response. I don't think we're looking for the survey to give us a definitive answer on
Right.
every question that we ask, but it might be helpful to
I
know
think that's a good idea.
which way people are leaning, and this survey is also obviously just the first step. You know, there's gonna be our forum where we're gonna be probably circling back to a number of these issues, so I don't think the input we get from the 80 people that respond to the survey is gonna give you guys your definitive answer on the direction of the Beal School.
Really, is that,
We'll see. I mean, we've had surveys that go anywhere from 20 people to 300 people. It's how you get the message out. It's whether or not people are, you know, if we show up at the senior center on the right night, sounds like we can get, you know, all of that in that one shot, which would be great. But that's one of the questions is how many people can you really get to respond? Because some people will respond to that, some won't. That's why we do a public forum. Let's have an event, bring people in, get input that way.
see, now, I would not be in favor of specifically targeting one demographic like men over 70. Because that's gonna skew, and, you know, very shortly I will be a man over 70. You don't wanna skew the results of the survey by targeting specific
Although I think that's the benefit of the handful of demographic questions, because you should be able to then quickly see, oh, an overwhelming response to tear it down. Oh, but look, it was all the guys that were over 70 or something like that. So that's where there's a little bit of benefit to having some limited amount of demographic information in a survey, just to make sure if something looks skewed, you can sort of test that against the demographic.
You get a lot is over at the library. There's traffic through there all day long, and they fill out surveys when they go in there. I mean, and of course, that's another demographic, that's used a lot more younger families, little kids. And then, you know, your statisticians, if you know there's gonna be a skewiness, you adjust for that.
Right.
Well, there could be kurtosis, I love that word, kurtosis.
Yeah.
Statistics. You know, there are places like that where you can get a lot of, you just gotta think about where are the concentrations of people?
How many folks are gonna walk through the door at town meeting?
300.
300?
Good spot.
But those people, it's representative town meeting, not open.
Right.
So the people that are showing up are probably more likely to fill out a survey than if it were open town, yeah.
Yeah, they're engaged, that's right,
I'm just thinking about
Plus
numbers.
people that might not be town meeting members, but they're there to push or support a specific
Right.
warrant article.
And you may get, there are problems with that too, because there's family people in there, and husbands and wives, so you might get, but anyway, you gotta look at your statistics anyway. But at least you get the input. You can always say, oh my God, we got 500 people from the men's club that did it, so we gotta watch out for that. Just gotta adjust it.
I don't know if it's, I don't think there's any science behind this, but, you know, we do a lot of, for example, public meetings around community master plans. And those meetings are becoming less and less popular, you know, people just aren't coming out. So we get pretty excited if we get 40 people. And when we were here in Shrewsbury, it was very easy to get 90 to 100. So I do think that the community is a bit more engaged, and I wouldn't be surprised if we get several hundred respondents to the survey. That's what I'm hoping for.
Any
You have anything else?
surveys during the November 6th election?
We can talk about the deadline. I mean, we wanted to have our, you guys have to do anything procedural?
No, we just, no. Go ahead.
Well, just on that final point, we did want to have our public meeting in early November, so we can think about that, sort of circle back on that. We wanted to have our survey, you know, we want it to be done with that and have it tallied and be able to look at it and see any patterns or any issues before we went into that public meeting. It's gonna help us design that meeting, so there is sort of a building there that we do.
Could I steer this discussion a little bit away from what we've been talking about right now? And bring it back to the reuse committee and the relationship with you folks in planning, because a certain part of it, we're trying to do the same thing. One of the questions that came up is, because from what Kristen said, a lot of this is gonna focus on Beal because it's such an important part of what's gonna happen up there. Is it possible for you folks are planning to meet with the reuse committee ahead of time to look at a draft, so that, you know, we're not heading one way and you're heading another way?
So what draft would we be looking at?
A draft of the final report,
Of ours?
yeah.
Okay.
Is that possible?
I would think so. I mean, I wanna check, I don't see why we couldn't have, you know, lots of people look at the draft before it gets finalized. And the reuse
Well,
is a part of that.
thinking,
If you look at task number 5, I did get a chance to look through this. There is the draft deliverable on December 18th. And I don't think we
that's
see,
the document is deliverable.
well, it says draft and final vision document, so I'm assuming that we'll see a draft from this proposal
Yes.
prior to public release.
But I'm thinking, Yeah, planning board might wanna see it, historic district commission, I'm not thinking of like public distribution.
Not a public forum.
What?
Not a public
Not a
forum.
public forum, no, that's after it's done, but, and work through it and make sure that, that we all agree that we hit the most important points, because I think as you work through it and we start to see the kind of information developing and what you're talking about, the reuse committee might come up with ideas. You're certainly gonna give the reuse committee a lot of ideas. In my talk with Kristen, there was gonna be a little bit of collaboration with the reuse committee. Not that you need to meet with us every week, because we wanna do that, but perhaps we meet, one or two times during the process, maybe right after. I don't know when the most appropriate time is. I mean, talk to Kristen and Bernie about it, but maybe after the survey comes back, when you get the raw results, or when you start to look at it, so we can start get a sense.
I think that might be a good time for us to circle back, because we're also gonna be thinking about, like I said, how we're gonna design sort of the next round of feedback. And we do like to involve stakeholders in design discussions around public process. Collaborative design is the fancy term around that. So I do think at that point in the project, that's probably a good
But this
time
would
to
be
circle
a
back.
meeting like with us, or maybe another board. This really was a public meeting, it wasn't a hearing, and I kinda let it go like it was a public hearing. Because I think it's kind of a casual, so that's fine, but I think maybe one or two meetings would be more working meetings with us. Not long, just to review what's there and, see if we're working along the same ways. Because I think when the report is done, I think we're gonna take a bunch of cues from it as far as what our final report will be, recommendations will be, so.
Okay. Yep, we can figure that out.
Yeah.
I just have a concern with the schedule in that the public forum is November 13th, right around Thanksgiving, when people aren't paying attention. We released the vision document December 18th, which immediately raises people's hackles. I remember when we used to have meetings the third week in December on Finance Committee, everyone suspected you were sneaking something through because it's nobody's paying attention. I think maybe we can have a meeting on the vision document December 18th, but I would prefer to see the final document be released after the holidays. Even if it's just a matter of review of the draft on December 18th. John, you remember, when we were on Finance Committee, when we had those December 20th meetings, everyone.
The way the third Thursday fell.
Yeah, we always, people thought we were acting in a nefarious manner because we're doing things right before.
Are we doing bylaw changes for the spring? Is that what's driving this?
I used to hear that all the time.
I don't recall why we're going quite so close.
I think that may be it.
Yeah.
So we're just talking amongst ourselves here about, what is driving the schedule, because I know we got very specific direction. That's why we've been so specific in the proposal. It may be, I'm just speculating, it may be because people would like to see bylaw changes introduced in the spring. I'm not sure of that.
We still, well, I don't know. I'll talk to Kristen tomorrow and find out, because she was instrumental in setting up the schedule, right?
Yeah.
It just seems like, to John's point, it feels like you, and I'm not saying you can't do the work, but we're trying to get the work done in a very short period of time. If this was back in August, and we wanted something prepared for town meeting, I could see, but we missed town meeting.
Yeah.
So, think about it. I'm gonna ask, there might be a reason why, and I was gonna ask Kristen. Yeah.
So, this grant and this award and this bid is being, for lack of a better word, coordinated by Kristen, but who are these folks working for? I mean, I know they're working for the town of
The
Shrewsbury,
planning
but
department is putting, this is a planning department project.
that's what I was asking. So it's really, we're in many ways, lucky beneficiary. It's a planning department product, not a reuse committee product, or, I'm just trying to
It's
understand.
funded by mass development.
Yes,
But-
but it's a planning.
No, I know.
I'm trying to see who the project manager or boss is, for lack
It's
of.
the planning department,
That's what I was thinking, thank you.
and we are gonna be a beneficiary of it, like everybody else.
Right,
We'll be a
right. Yeah,
beneficiary.
so I guess the underlying not so subtle question was, if they're working for the planning department, put the word working in quotes, I understand. What would the planning department's
They
agenda
actually
be?
work, you know.
Working meaning, they're a contractor and they're doing a project for us, that's why I said working. If they're working for the planning department, what would the timeline and the agenda be driven by the planning department to that end? In other words, what's?
No, right, that's what I'm gonna
Yeah,
ask.
right, that's, I was just getting clarity on who you ask and why, we're all on the
Yeah,
same page.
no, it's a
That's-
planning department. We didn't get, the reuse committee didn't get the grant.
I'm painfully aware, but I'm trying to understand exactly the chain of, it was a chain of
Right.
command question.
So, but I mean, as much as it, I mean, Kristen and Bernie, through the planning department, applied to Mass Development for the project, and obviously the MOA is signed by the Board of Selectmen. But ultimately, it's very important that the Beal Reuse Committee
Completely agreed.
be like this.
That's why I was asking the
Process,
question.
yes,
Well,
yeah.
it's not this initiative is not the reuse committee's initiative, it's the planning, but I'm more than happy to be a lucky beneficiary. I was just trying to understand the chain of command, that's all.
I just want to compliment the Board of Selectmen for appointing a Beal Reuse Committee, because many towns would wait till the building is vacant before they try to figure out what to do with it. This building is not going to be available to July 2021. And it appears to me that we're going to have a plan in place before that. So a lot of the project work, the planning, the drawings, the bidding, and everything could be done. So this building's not gonna sit as an eyesore for 3 or 4 years till we figure out what to do with it. That's my sense of what's happening. Is that?
Knock on wood.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, well,
Yeah.
hopefully, yeah, exactly.
Knocking for Micah.
I have just a point of clarification. Could you repeat your name and then you? I know you.
Nate Kelly,
Okay, so you're Nate Kelly, who's listed here.
yeah, Nathan Kelly on
And then,
my
your
signature.
associate, and then you,
Jeremy Lake,
just as it sounds.
just as it sounds.
And your title, please?
I'm a senior associate
Senior, right, okay, thank you.
with Union Studio.
With Union Studio.
Yep.
This is minutes, and she's also local coverage.
And I can give you my card too if you want.
I would love
That'd be the
that.
easiest version,
Nate,
right?
Nate, anything else?
I'm not here as a reporter though.
You want a motion, Mel?
You can't resist.
Then
Pass that
You're
around.
gonna be
Nate?
taken tonight.
Nate, if you're all set, then we're gonna adjourn the meeting.
Great.
Motion to adjourn?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.
And they have to adjourn.
Thank you.
Thank you.
They need to.
Oh,
Don't worry about that.
We're gonna adjourn.
I'd like to make the motion to adjourn the meeting of the historic district.
You know what, I don't actually have one with me at this moment, no, sorry. Let me come.
Adjourning,